to make it 28-3. Arthur Blank loving it. Up by 25. Toss to White. He's in! What a comeback!
All right, you are listening to another episode of the 28-3 podcast. I'm Corey. I'm here with Max and Nick. So on today's episode, we're going to get into OTAs, but not just reporting on OTAs or talking about observations. We're going to get into the value of what you see in OTAs. You know, we've talked about this off air. Max and Nick and I have talked about, do you really get anything out of OTAs? It's all observations from beat reporters. It's press conferences. They don't have pads on. But then again, there are certain things that come up where you say, maybe that's something. So we're going to throw out some observations, say, is that something or nothing? And we're also going to talk about the whole idea of evaluating a team alone at this point in the offseason based on OTAs. So, you know, Max, we've talked about this. Today, the Saints completed their third OTA. Their next stop in the offseason is minicamp. You know, what is your first? Let's talk about your overall stance on OTAs. Is it something to talk about, or is it not really something to talk about?
I mean, OTAs are definitely something to talk about. You know, I'm a Saints news junkie. I will digest any news I can find on it. But at the same point, I'm not going to freak out and scream Super Bowl when I see that Derek Carr went 8 for 8 against Air.
Well, you should. 8 for 8.
Yeah, that's impressive. I think Nick went like 15 for 15 last time we were tossing the football around.
Yeah, elite.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, but did Nick show up to practice with a hoodie with the sleeves rolled up, showing off the guns?
I mean, he doesn't have Derek Carr's guns, but who does?
Yeah, I mean, so that's another thing. It's like observations. Is it something or is it nothing? Derek Carr's guns, something or nothing?
Yeah, look, it's something because he's got some guns. But I think the stance we're talking about today with OTAs, you know, how much does it really matter that everything we see? You know, we look on Twitter, we see like, oh, so-and-so went 8 for 8. You know, they're running a 4-3 defense right now for, you know, 25% of the install. You know, Brian Brzee is working with a third team. I mean, how much? I don't know. I don't read too much into any of that.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's fun to, you know, to get new Saints content, but at the same point, you know, how much of this is actually useful? In my opinion, not much, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, and we talked about this before, and
Actually, hold on. Let me say this, because I know It was a couple years ago. Who was that wide receiver? Emmanuel Butler. Everybody was freaking the fuck out about Emmanuel Butler in rookie minicamp and then in OTAs, and then the dude never played. You know, and it happens every year.
What was the one before that we kept? That blew up in minicamp.
Man, there was a couple of them. There was Seantavius Jones. There was Brandon Coleman. Now, Coleman did manage to stick around for a few years and was a great blocker and a fantastic number 4 or 5.
Arrington was a big talk of...
Adrian Arrington, yeah. Onome Ojo.
I was about to say, that's
Ojo was a really big one. That they thought his size and everything, he was going to be something and never did anything. So I think there's not much to talk about. I think what you're looking for in this part of the, you know, off season is, what's the team look like? How is Derek controlling the team? Mm-hmm. Does it look organized? Does it look like it's a cohesive unit? I don't think you're looking at any performance metrics or any, I mean, someone could blow up right now and it means absolutely nothing. But if it looks like we're moving in the right direction, you know, we've had these couple years since Drew left where, not to say it was sloppy, but just a certain tone in these type of practices where it seems like Derek may have, you know, kind of taken control of the team, right, where there's mentoring going on, where there's communication going on, telling players, this is what I expect of you, that maybe was missing the last couple of years, that all of a sudden is showing back up. Now, we all know he's not Drew Brees. We're not saying
Nobody
that.
Is, though.
But just from a standpoint and a mindset of the team, I think that's mostly what I'm looking for. And what's it look like? Do we look like we're coming together? Let's not worry about what his completion percentage is or you know, how some rookie free agent looks at the receiver position, catches one over Lattimore or something, and all of a sudden he's going to be a star. Usually that doesn't materialize. We're just looking for the way the team is operating, from my standpoint.
And my perspective on it is, my first inclination anyway, is it has to be something. The team's been dormant pretty much.
We're starved for news.
Right, we're starved for news. So with the team being dormant since the last play of the season, except for the draft, which is obviously not an on-field thing.
But us wanting news doesn't make it mean something either.
Right. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, my first inclination is that it has to be something because they're on the field. They're wearing the helmets. They're wearing the uniforms. They got the stupid mushroom padded things to make sure that no one has a concussion even though they're not wearing pads. All these things that point to this is something. But then again, I do turn my head and lose interest when I see somebody, like Max said, freaking out over Derek Carr went 8 for 8 in 7-on-7 or 5 of 5 7-on-7, and then when they went to team drills, he went another 3 of 3. It's like, okay, what is a team drill when no one's wearing pads? First off, so I agree that when you're breaking down statistics from an OTA, that's a little bit too far afield. But I will say, I did see on Twitter those Tampa Bay Buccaneer QB highlights or lowlights, if you want to. And Baker Mayfield, and really this isn't just to knock Baker because Trask did it too. They were missing on air. They were overthrowing their guys. So I don't look at it 8 for 8 and say Derek Carr was perfect. No, it's not that. But I do think, kind of like Nick said, you get a feel, mayie, hopefully, for the team.
Let me say this. So Drew Brees' first year in New Orleans, he couldn't even throw the damn ball in OTAs.
Right.
And then you got to the preseason. He did not look good in the preseason, man. It was, there was some actual concern. We didn't know what we had in him at that point. And then obviously, once we got to the regular season, it was a slower start. And then he ramped up and obviously never looked back at that point. My biggest thing with OTAs is I want to see what the attendance is. And attendance was up this year over prior year, which is great news. Last year there were a few too many people missing.
That's also something that should make you feel a little better about the coaching staff.
No, absolutely. It's a great sign for things going into the season. And there's still a few key guys that are missing. I know Lattimore hasn't been there yet, and you'd like to see him out there, especially when you hear interviews from the other secondary guys like Alontae Taylor, Tyrann Mathieu, and they're talking about the time right now is being spent building up chemistry and just getting to know each other, because they all cited that last year that was a big issue. Most of the people were new in the defensive back room, and that translated over to them struggling a little bit at the early part of the season. So I would like to see Lattimore out there just building up a little more rapport with the rest of the secondary guys. I don't think it's a cause for concern, but you'd like to see him out there as a team leader.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there have been some things in OTAs to me that have stood out. But again,
what you got? Tell us a few.
Okay, so I think there's the play on the field. Okay, the 8 of 8 thing with Derek Carr. Okay, I'm not freaking out and going to say Super Bowl. And there's a few people on Twitter jokingly saying that. But if you compare that to when Jameis came in after Breeze, and even when they gave
remember
Dalton,
it was a competition between Taysom and Jameis,
right? And even when you give Taysom reps, even against air, those guys did have, it was reported those guys did have some misses. They weren't necessarily perfect. You did not hear the reports that they have a presence, so to speak, and so I am encouraged by the fact that, kind of like we talked about in one of our earlier episodes, where this, except for the random ass Rams games and a couple of duds that Sean Payton played, when Sean Payton had a good team, when he had an 09 team, when he had an 11 team, the NFC Championship teams, we beat the bad teams the way we were supposed to beat them. And juxtapose that to OTAs, Carr did what he was supposed to do against
let me interject. I think what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carr he's making more adjustments at the line, and that was something that the center was making the adjustments the last 2 years for the quarterbacks.
Well,
Obviously, Breeze handled all that, so
Right.
we're seeing Carr take more control from that respect.
And that's a great
There's
sign.
the presence thing.
That's a great
but
sign.
even on a more surface level than that, it's OTAs. There's no pads. It's air. So you would expect, like, if you got a guy who's worthy of being a starter, worthy of being a starter who can lead you to the playoffs, which is what we signed up Carr to do, that dude shouldn't miss a pass against air. And he didn't.
I think
very
that-
simply put, he did what he was supposed to do.
I think that matters
I think
less
that's encouraging.
than the part where you're talking about him calling out the line protections, him
See,
calling
that's
the
the important
audibles.
thing to me.
See, because that's something we haven't had
Yeah.
since Drew left.
Right.
So the best quarterbacks in the league all do that.
Oh, yeah.
They are in charge of the whole offense. You don't have to delegate something to the center.
Right.
Now, not that there aren't great centers in the league that do that and do it well.
Sure.
There are a couple. But
We've had
the
some.
best quarterbacks in the league are control of everything. They
Yeah.
understand the protection. They understand the coverage. They understand the plays they're running. They know when to audible out. That just shows that he's already gaining an understanding of what we're trying to do. He's a leader. He's, a longtime vet. That's what we haven't had.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the biggest issue with Jameis was not his skill level. Everyone could see what he could do throwing a football.
Yeah.
It looked like a first pick in
There's
the
the
draft.
reason he was the first pick in the draft.
The problem with Jameis for me always, and when we signed him, was I don't believe anyone took him seriously. And when he got here, I think he really tried to change that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's something you have or you don't have.
Yeah.
And to have it is elite. It's not necessarily a total knock on Jameis. There aren't many people who just can come in and command everyone's attention and be able to keep everybody
There's
on the
less
same
than
page.
15 in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably less than that. If
Probably
you're
less than
really
that.
if you're holding it to a high standard, it's probably less than that. And Jameis, we all love the dancing and the fun. We all love that. But I just don't feel anyone ever took him really seriously.
Yeah.
and
Now that has changed, and I think that's what we're seeing very early on, is that Carr pulling Jamal Williams aside in one of those clips where,
Sure.
like, hey, this is what we're trying to do with this play.
Right.
That's what was missing. Not skill as much as someone who's
It's
in
command.
command of everything.
The word is command, and it's again, the quarterbacks in the NFL are paid professionals. They're all making over $1 million. There's less than
Way
100
over
of them in the league. They're all making over $1 million, pretty much. And the reality is, they're all going to complete passes against air. The reason the whole Trask Mayfield thing got so much play was because they weren't, and that's the exception.
Right.
All these guys are professionals. You know what I mean? So it doesn't get me excited when I see Carr completing passes that are 10 yards down the field against air. The real thing I appreciate is the command of the offense, like Nick was saying, and I brought up before. That is what we need to see because we have not had that. The fact that we have had to depend on a center the last 2 years to make all these adjustments at the line it's ridiculous.
And a center who was trying to improve, very young, not
Right.
an established great center.
Yeah.
A guy who's
He
trying
was in his
to
third year.
trying to
Right.
get his game going.
Middle of the road because of his inexperienced
Right.
center.
And then put all that on him in addition to him trying to get better. That just shows where we were quarterback-wise with Jameis and Dalton. And
We were wandering the desert looking for water.
Yeah. Here's my word on, Carr's performance on the field in OTAs. Again, this is per observations of media, but it's more of relief as opposed to excitement. Because at this point, like y'all said, there's no pads. He can make adjustments at the line. He can command certain things, but he doesn't really have the full arsenal at his disposal to. Sure, you can make adjustments against air or whatever, but you're not going to really see how it plays out. So hearing the way that he's operating the offense and OTAs, the precision, the people are saying he's got zip on his passes, he's distributing the ball. I think they said a lot of, in the first OTAs anyway, a lot of his passes were going, I think Jawan Johnson was his favorite target. Again, it's not excitement because of that. It's really just relief. Okay, he's doing what he's supposed to do. And but
I think that's something you're going to probably see in the season, though.
Yeah.
It's going to be Jawan Johnson. It's going to be Kamara or Williams or, Keandre, whoever it is in the backfield. He's going to run a safer type of offense, which is, in my opinion, what was missing from the Saints. We lost games on offense last year and the year before. If we just don't lose those games and he can finish in the red zone at a higher efficiency than we did last year. Last year, if we finish in the red zone, we're a double-digit win team.
Yeah.
We gave up tons of opportunities down there.
Yeah.
And that, if just that one aspect of the team changes, we're in good shape. I think, we talk about Carr back and forth. He has to be what we signed him for. What did we sign him for? Okay, he's not a top 10 paid quarterback. Okay, he's outside of that. If he is just right around there, then we hit a home run.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be an elite, top level, all pro level quarterback for this roster to be very competitive in the NFC. He needs to be solid. He needs to be a potential Pro Bowler. That level of quarterback, which I think is where we paid him. We paid him around, 12th, 14th in the league as it's shaken out, after the offseason was done, Lamar and all these guys getting their contracts, more contracts to come with Burrow. But if he just performs at that level where we paid him, then it's a huge luxury because we have paid accurate value for Carr. We didn't overpay for Carr, which is why we thought we lost him initially because we weren't willing to go up to a level that was maybe too much for what he was. So we come in, he comes in. So far, it looks exactly the part we're hoping.
Yeah.
So we have to be excited about that.
And here's the one thing I'll say to wrap up the Carr decision, the Carr topic, and going back to OTAs as well. What they do in the field is one thing, sure. Any beat writer can get out there and tell people what they think they saw, regardless of their football background. Right. But the cool thing to me about OTAs is that there's not only do you get to see what they do on the field, which is really just a hint of what they might do later, but you get to hear what they say because it gives them that media availability requirement, basically. And one thing that, to your point, Nick, that Carr said today, I heard his media availability interview from today. He said, he gets to just be himself here, and it's kind of like with Jameis, looking at Carr, looking at other QBs that didn't pan out. The NFL shows you can't ever be, who you're not. You either are your true self as an NFL QB, and that either works or it doesn't. Jameis tried to fit the mold of the game commander, the Breeze type, Sean Payton field general type. It just didn't work.
He had big talent.
Yeah.
I think he was trying to transform himself.
Yeah.
It's just a hard thing to learn when you don't just initially have it.
Yeah, and so to put a cap on the Carr thing, it was really encouraging. Again, you see what you see on the field, but also to hear what he says. And what he said today, and again, talk could be cheap, sure, but I think it's meaningful in this case, and y'all can disagree with me, but when I hear a guy like Carr say, this isn't like my last stop where he literally said he said, I don't have to worry about droughts here. I don't have to worry about being the guy to lead us out of something. He's like, I'm coming to this team that has had success. I'm coming to this team that already is talented. And so he's like, I just get to show up and do my thing and study film and talk to my receivers, talk to Mike. Great to see Mike out on the field today. Talk to Olave. He's all the things that look. Carr gets an A+ for at least what he's saying, but it was really encouraging to hear him say, "I just get to be me."
Getting back to it, what Max said about Breeze, though. Breeze was running his first OTAs and mini camp, not being able to throw the ball. He was out there making the team better, going through the motions. Carr is going through the motions, throwing the ball. None of the actual football stuff matters at all right now.
Agreed.
He has to get the team all moving in the same direction. That's what it's looked like so far. Does it mean anything yet? No. But that's what we're looking to watch.
Right. It's a good start. Now, I will say this, though, and moving on to a different part of OTAs, one thing I do like to watch every year is just seeing the rookies on the field and just kind of seeing physically how they stack up with the vets. With how you had the discrepancy in the height, weight measurements going from college to the NFL, and even the Saints, they inflate their guys a little bit. as well. When you're seeing them out there side by side, you can kind of get a better feel for how big someone is and how athletic they are when you see them move. I'll use A.T. Perry as an example. I think at the combine he measured at 6'3". All of a sudden, you look at the Saints roster, he's 6'5". So seeing him out on the field, standing next to Michael Thomas, that gives you a little more perspective as to how big he is and how lanky he is, and that he needs to put on some weight. But I like seeing how they stack up physically against the vets.
Yeah, I mean, I think and that was another thought I had, is that OTA is becoming increasingly popular based on who's showing up that you're excited about. I mean,
here's a side thing. Who's the last Saints player who came out of nowhere in OTA's minicamp to actually make an impact? Like a big impact. Not like, oh, he got some snaps on special teams. Who was the last one to kind of come out of nowhere? Is it Colston? Is it that
No,
far
because
back?
Colston, I listened to his interview on Underhill and Triplets pod the other day. He was talking about coming out of OTAs and minicamp. He thought he was getting cut.
converted
He
tight
thought
end.
that, but Peyton was raving about
Well,
it.
no, not after the first round of him. When he came back for, I guess, training camp, he said he came back with a whole different mindset. He's like, I have to fight for this because I'm about to get fired.
I can't remember.
I would say
that's
Willie
today's
Snead.
different.
Willie Snead.
I was going to
one.
say Snead.
Because I remember Underhill being all over him, talking about, like, this dude, he's going to be good.
I can't remember if he was a training camp pickup or if he was there for OTAs, but
He was picked up the previous season off
about
of
Lance?
practice
I know
squad.
Lance Moore.
Lance was a better player than Willie, or no?
Oh yeah, 100%.
I think
100%.
so. He came
100%.
out of
Yeah.
nowhere
They both did.
early.
And Lance
Anyone
Moore,
recent? Anyone like in the last 5 to 8 years that
Man,
you
I
can
can't.
think
It's
of?
it's honestly it's the opposite.
Tommy
like we
Lee Lewis?
touched on earlier. It's your Shantavius Jones. It's your Emmanuel Butlers. It's players like that. Because wide receivers are the ones that always stand out the most in rookie camp and OTAs because you're running routes on air. You know what I mean? There's no real physicality to it. You're just watching these big guys run and do what they're paid to do. So they're
They
always
did
going to
fall in
look
love with
better.
Callaway early.
Yeah,
Shaw did. He's got him back. And look, he made an impact that year. He had to. He was a decent player.
like I told you that whole year, he's a great number 4.
hey, I will say, I am glad that we were done with worrying about if our coach is lusting over some player just because it's his guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
God, that was a concern.
It did hurt Peyton a bit. I mean, the Taysom contract, the love with Taysom,
Don't get me started on Cadet. Tavares Cadet?
yeah,
Jesus Christ.
The guy on the no call.
Tommy Lee
Tommy
Lewis.
Lee,
God
he
damn it!
loved
Now I'm
Tommy Lee, and
triggered.
Tommy Lee could not hold on to a ball for his life. He fumbled
Yeah,
every
and
time he touched it.
because Bill Parcells told Peyton about him.
Yeah.
So he had to go.
And I'll
with
be
it.
honest with you, if Tommy Lee could have held on to the ball, he could have been an actual player for us. But even when he got tackled, the ball fumbled out of
Dude,
bounds.
he was like
every time.
5'6". I
Yeah.
think they listed him at 5'7", so he's probably 5'4".
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Peyton did love Lutz is another one, maybe. There's a lot of those. But with that said, him falling in love with players also allowed some of those late rounders to get in probably sooner than he would have got in. And a lot of those
Well,
made
the
big
undrafted
impact.
guys, yeah.
Yeah, so
Pierre Thomas.
they were good and bad. Pierre Thomas doesn't make a roster in a lot of spots.
Remember,
And-
they had picked Antonio Pittman.
and they traded him.
In the
Or cut
no,
him.
they cut him.
Flat out cut him.
Flat out cut him.
So, you take the good with the bad with Peyton. I'm not going to criticize him too much, but because we got a Colston, we got a Pierre, we got
More importantly, we got a Super Bowl.
Mike Bell, we got a ton of players that made it work. But he also fell in love with players that really were detrimental to the roster later in his career with the Saints.
Yeah, and look, I'm gonna change gears on this. I will say the one position that OTAs I'm actually intrigued in this year is the kicker battle. No. I mean, this is
It's off season when you're talking about kickers.
well, no. I mean, look, we've made our point on Lutz over the last couple of episodes. Talking about how he struggled the last few years with injuries and then also with performance when he's played, with the exception of the game in London last year, which, as we touched on, could have been the greatest kicker game ever if he connects on that second 60-plus
Two
yarder.
60-yarders in a game would have been the greatest kicker game.
He really would have. But that being said, he makes a lot of money, and I believe he's in the last year of his contract. And they have a undrafted rookie free agent kicker in camp right now who they apparently are raving about.
So what needs to happen for them to keep him and cut Lutz? What needs to happen, in your opinion?
I don't know. He went 6 for 6 today, I believe, and he was nailing 50-yard field goals. So let's see if he can keep it going.
But Lutz can hit 60s. So
apparently this kid can too. So obviously we need to see what happens in the game. But I just want to, the fact that he's going 6 for 6 right now, like kickers, that's a stat. I'll get behind on that.
My question is, does Lutz need a fail, or can this kid just beat him out straight up? Both of them looking great, and we just decide to make a money decision.
I think with the money decision involved, it's a possibility.
You think that's enough?
Yeah.
Okay. So if Lutz comes out, plays great, and this kid also comes out,
you know what I think happens? I think it's going to be like the Morstead-Gillikin situation, where somehow this kid develops some kind of injury, gets thrown on IR, basically gets a redshirt year. Lutz finishes out the contract.
I can see that. I see that more because I do think there's a loyalty to Lutz. If he comes out and plays well, I don't see any scenario they actually get rid of him. But I do see a scenario like that. You know, all of a sudden he has a hamstring injury.
Yep.
And we keep him, and next year he's our kicker. I could see that more. Now, if Lutz comes out and struggles, I could see it.
Yeah.
I was cutting him.
I think the scenario that's most likely is, like you just said, this kid's going to have a hamstring injury or a groin pull or something, just like Gillikin did mysteriously.
Keep him on the
All of a
roster
sudden, he's on
minimum.
IR for the whole year, and then next year he's the kicker.
Saints love him some IR, some minor injury
Smart
IR.
way to pack people away. It's like drafting the foreign players in the NBA. You just leave them over there for a little
It's a
while.
smart move. It's a smart
Yeah,
move.
the guys are bought in. They'll do it.
Well, you got any more OTA thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, as I'm going through the topics and the observations you hear, it like I said, it brings me to like a something or nothing. So one deep take that I know you loved, Max, is it something or is it nothing? The Saints were observed in their first OTA running, what was it? I'm looking it up here. Over half of their snaps were run out of the 4-3. They only ran 25% of snaps out of the same formation last year. Max, is that something or is that nothing?
Oh, my fucking God. It's absolutely nothing. This team is not going to change what they're running. Zach Bond will probably see 5 snaps a game as the Sam linebacker, and you're going to see Pete Werner and Demario Davis playing 99% of the snaps.
I mean,
The only thing that's
This
interesting
is
to
basic
me
install.
on the defense is what does the line rotation look like as we get closer to the season? What's the defensive line look like?
And
How
I'll
are
say
they
this.
moving those pieces around and making that work?
Right.
Because there's
And-
a lot of
And
them.
it's too early to read into,
Yeah.
Brzee running third team. That doesn't mean shit right now.
I did see a line that he took first team snaps today.
Again, that doesn't mean shit at this
Let me
point.
tell
He's
you,
moving up the
Brzee
depth
is
chart,
starting.
Max.
It
Okay?
means nothing at
You
this
can
point.
forget all of it. That's why OTAs, in a lot of cases, bullshit. He's starting.
Okay,
when
so
the season
He is
starts.
starting when the season starts.
So let me
Trust
just
me.
get this
Bank on
straight,
it.
Max. You're saying that the Saints are not going to run a 4-3 this year, and that Brian Brzee has not already risen from third string to first string on the depth chart based on OTA observations. Is that true?
What I am saying is the Saints are going to run the same defensive scheme they have run for the entire Dennis Allen era. They are going to predominantly run with 2 linebackers and more defensive backs. That's going to be what happens. And then Brzee is going to end up starting.
I'll put it this way. Some of these...
They didn't pick him in the first round for him to ride the pine.
Correct. He won't
Yeah.
be a rotational player behind those two. It just won't.
He's starting.
He's starting, and you hope you got it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, like, there's also, with the way we rotate players, maybe he doesn't play the actual first snap of the game. Maybe he doesn't even play the majority of the snaps, but he will play...
I will say he will play the majority of the snaps. He might not take the
That's
first
where I'm
snap.
at. I think
he's
he does
going
play
to play the majority of the
Yeah.
snaps.
You're correct. You don't know what that looks like. Maybe
but just
he
the way
doesn't
that
even
Dennis
start.
Allen runs a defense, he's always changing
There's
it up.
rotation.
I
yeah.
think he ends up being your getting
Your guy.
the most snaps at DT of any DT on the team. Is
Agree.
what I think.
Agree.
Sure.
And I think there's also scenarios where you see him pushed outside at defensive end.
Yeah. Which is why we're going to run a 4-3 this year. I think that first observation is just incredibly profound.
It's fucking stupid. And the fact that you have it in your notes is retarded.
So that's what I'm saying. A lot of these, I'll call them like deep
That's not
observations,
deep,
like deep cuts. They're just kind of. I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that they're even installing it, or even
That's interesting?
I think it's. I'm not saying it's something, because something would be higher than
So
interesting.
wait, they don't do installs every year at the first
No,
couple
but I mean,
practices?
like, well, they could install their 3-4. They could install their base. They could show the new guys the base. They could show Shepard and Saunders the base.
Their
you know,
base is a 4-3. They just don't, like we talked about how
when I say
the
base, I mean,
starters don't play. Might not play more than a couple plays. It's
Right.
They rotate in so much.
but when I say base, I mean like the formation they run the most. They don't run the 4-3 the most. It might be technically the base, quote unquote, formation. Anyway, I don't want
It's
to
a
spend a whole lot of time
4-something the
because that's one of those deep. Yeah, it's a 4 and change.
It's a 4.
I know there's 4 in the front.
Yeah, there's- there's-
4.5 and 2 and change.
Yeah, look, the reality is with this secondary,
I'm gonna
being
say
what
this.
hold on, the secondary, which we have been on record saying that we think is going to be the strength of the team this year. Nick, you've talked about it's one of the strongest secondaries we've seen. It's you're going to play to your strength. You're
It
not
should
going to
be
throw
top five,
Zach
right?
Bond on the field.
We should have all the secondary in the field this year.
Exactly.
It should be Tehran, May, Abram, Alante, Adebo, Roby, Lattimore.
Get them all on
That's
the
who
field.
should be on
Yeah.
the field all the
Third-
time.
Yeah.
Third and long, your linebackers are Marcus May and Teron Matthew.
Well, no, your linebacker is going to be
I mean,
DeMario.
I know that's no, this is a stretch. I mean, but
Your
it's like
linebackers might be DeMario and Abram,
Roll-
DeMario and
Roll
Pete.
May
It
down
could be-
there.
DeMario's on the field.
It could be a whole That's why it's so versatile.
Yeah.
The secondary is.
And-
Abram can't cover. We all know that. But as a secondary player, you put him in a Jamal Adams role.
Yeah.
You actually put him in the right role.
Yeah.
That guy could become a star. Everyone's
box safety.
expecting him to do things he doesn't
right.
do well.
And again, and that's why this point of the offseason, these takes that are coming out, these observations that are only made by people who are granted the media credentials to be out there observing them, and again, only observing them for a limited amount of practice. It's like like Max said, we cling on to this stuff. We haven't seen them yet. We want to see them. And so, when you hear things like, oh, they rolled out Alante Taylor, or he ran half of his snaps out of the nickel, out of the slot. So, you're going to have guys that are like, see, told you, Alante Taylor in the slot this year. But obviously, you want to say that. You want to cling to that, but you can't.
Well, the other
You
thing
know?
is these people are paid for content, and they have to put content out.
Right.
And
You
if
gotta
all
do
the
it.
content they can spot is a 4-3 defense, I mean, that's whatever. They're getting paid for it. They got to
Corey,
put it
they
out.
Yeah.
know you want content right now as
do.
a Saints
Right.
fan.
I do.
They know it, so they have to put something out there. So, like, a
And
lot of the media stuff is all
I have
BS.
I have no shame in at least reading it.
And,
I will
and
do
we
it.
all do. We all want to read about the team as much as we can. I
Just
just
take it
think
with a grain of
lot
salt.
of it is just fluff.
Yeah.
It's
It-
just fluff.
I kind of almost at this point in the season, in the off season, I almost kind of look and search for the people who are, taking it to the moon. Like who's got the worst take out of the entire OTAs? Is it me on this podcast?
I would
Is
say
it-
so,
is
yeah.
it-
You get my vote.
Which one?
Um,
Which take?
Oh, I don't know. I've had a lot of bad takes
Which
so
take
far
are you regretting? Let's just ask you that.
from
You know what? This is a good
from
finish to
OTAs.
every
Well, that's what I was going to
episode.
say. There's an entire episode that we are going to have. I don't know if we are ready because there's still some more skins to be put on the wall, but there will be a Hills of Death
Man, that one-
episode where because we have died on some. I've died on the most, obviously, but there's hills that we've died on that need some rehashing and revisiting.
I think we released the lost Lorenzo Neal Hill as a special to anyone who subscribes to this down the road.
I don't know if they're ready for it. That
No one is ready for
There
it.
was
I'm
some
not ready
Do,
for
carnage.
it.
Lorenzo Neal,
there was some carnage on that
Rashid
one.
Shaheed combo.
It's not often that we had. I mean, really, we haven't recorded over any audio before that. I don't know if we ever will, but that one was. Whew.
Yeah, we should not have stopped recording on that one. But
That'll
hey,
be
hey,
a
that's
bye week
that's
special.
But I've
another- that's
recovered.
another
But I've
point.
recovered.
That's a bye-week special.
It has been recovered. I went Nicolas Cage, National Treasure on that shit. I recovered it. We have it, and so
Well,
yeah.
you know
Once
what? Like
we
Nick said, that's the bye week special.
once we get the subscribers all stood up, we'll use that as a carrot. It'll be worth it. Okay, one last something or nothing. Mike Thomas was there today.
Nothing.
It's nothing, but I like that he was actually out there, and he did say that he will be ready for training camp. So I'll take him at his word and be optimistic.
The last thing on Thomas, we've discussed. Max was a little more hesitant than Corey and I. The dude has something to prove, and the guy is a relentless motherfucker.
Hey, and again,
If his
I
body
am on
holds
record.
up,
Yeah.
he is going to destroy people. This
I am
year.
on record saying I hope that you are completely right and I am completely wrong. I'm just more hesitant because he has basically not played for 3 years.
Yeah,
I get it.
The
But
easiest.
look, instead of going off on this tangent, that was a great thing to see him on the field.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
him
it shows
saying
you
that
what I'm saying is that he's like, I'm here to destroy people because there's no reason
Well,
for a Michael Thomas.
he's
to
not
be here.
cleared yet, so let's temper it a little.
And it's
I
like,
agree, but he's here. He doesn't have to be here.
It's
He
great
could easily
to
be
see.
like, I'm still working through the process.
You know, he did that the last 3 years and it didn't
Yeah,
work out.
and
Right.
that's why I'm saying I think it's a little different. He's
Again,
ready to destroy people.
we're
He and
hungry.
Zion going neck and neck with the 3 years of bonehead decisions.
Not
Yeah.
3 for Zion. That's not true.
I mean, look,
not true.
it's great to see him, and like I said before, it's also great to hear these guys. But the easiest thing for Mike Thomas to do right now is talk.
Exactly. I want
We
to
need to
play.
see him on the field. I mean, I trust he's doing everything he's
But
supposed
like
to do.
Max says, he hasn't been here in the past. He's here.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
just
Oh yeah.
saying.
Well, he was
He
Carr.
is ready to prove a lot of people wrong. Finally, this is what we've been
Yeah.
waiting for.
Carr
So
in his
let's-
press conference was talking about how MT was blowing him up before he even decided to come here, and he said MT was calling him like, "Hey, did you do it? Did you do it?" And so like hearing that stuff, I think
I'm
that's
not going to
also
blame
what
Mike for
OTAs
not being super pumped about the Winston Dalton Taysom situation.
No, I don't.
I feel
yeah.
like he is re-engaged now. Let's see
He
if he
should be
stays healthy.
engaged. He's a paid professional.
He should be.
engaged all the time.
He wasn't though.
I know
he wasn't here.
which is another story.
He is now.
Yeah.
So that's something. This is the leadership we're talking about.
Hmm?
There's a certain person who showed up. All of a sudden, Mike is here early.
People want to be here. 80 out of 89 attendance right off the bat. That's good.
Actually,
So-
that's a perfect wrap up to the episode, though, because it goes
Yeah.
back to Derek Carr's, the first thing we were talking about, his command of the huddle, which extends to his command of the team, which
Yeah.
is being shown by Michael Thomas being there. So Carr is
Yep.
obviously having a positive effect. So that, to me, is bigger than him going for 8 for 8. That's
Yeah.
my closing thoughts.
And I agree with that. Starts with the most important position on the field. He brought people in. So we have our takeaways from OTAs. Some of us have our somethings. Some of us have our nothings. This portion of the offseason is now wrapped up. Minicamp is next, which means we're going to have a lot of time to come up with some crazy-ass episode ideas because the shit's about to get pretty dry in the next few weeks and months until training camp starts. So thanks again for listening to another episode of the 28-3 podcast. Till next time.
What a comeback!